Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm David Yakir.
And I'm Stephanie Raffelock.
And you're listening to Yak About Today. So this is a place to hear conversation, get insights, and perspectives from baby boomers themselves. So if the years 46 to 64 mean something to you, then this is the place you want to be. So put on your headphones, go for that walk, and listen to what we yak about today. Hey, Steph, how was your week?
My week was pretty good. You know, this is like hot summer here in Austin, Texas. And I think the next 3 days we're on record for being 106 every day.
Is that without the humidity, straight temperature, or is that one of those feels like?
Well, no, we do have some humidity in Austin, not quite as much as they have in Houston because we're not as close to the ocean. But yeah, it's kind of got that oppressive feel to it. You know, it's like real intense heat, and then you've got a little moisture in the air, and you sort of feel like somebody's squeezing you when you're walking.
Right.
But not like a good squeeze.
That's funny. It's always interesting because I think heat and how we react to it during the summer is psychological. So let me explain.
Okay.
The first year or two that I came down to Florida, I suffered the summers. Literally, I walked out and I was so uncomfortable and I was drenched and I'd be walking the dog. And I'd get back and I felt like I had a shower immediately. And by the second or third summer, something happened where I was out. Nothing changed about my physical reaction, but mentally, it didn't bother me. You know, it was the type of thing where, okay, I'm wet. I can continue. It's sort of like going for a run. You don't mind when you go for a run, you know, how hot you get and sweaty. It feels good. It feels great. But when you're outside walking, for some reason, you're going, oh, it's so hot out. It's so hot out. And the other thing that always is astounding to me is when my neighbors come out who have lived here for years and years during the summer, come out to do something and they go, oh, David, it's so hot out. Like it was any different from last year or the year before or the year before.
Well, there you have it.
That's right. So you're opening today with your current event. And from what I understand, of course, it's really relevant and probably it'll find its way through the show somehow. So hit it.
Okay. So I'm going to start with Shirley Chisholm, who was the first Black woman elected to the U.S. Congress in 1968. She ran for president in 1972, and she was a trailblazer for what was to follow, albeit slowly. So Geraldine Ferrara, I remember from 1984, was the first VP pick in a national election. And then Sarah Palin followed. But yesterday, or maybe it was day before yesterday, Kamala Harris, in the style, honor, and courage of Shirley Chisholm, which is why I brought her name up, is the first Black and Asian woman to be named a vice presidential pick. And I got to tell you, I feel such a sense of pride. When I look into Kamala Harris's face, I see the American story. She's the daughter of immigrants. She's a midlife woman. She's a mother and a career woman. And for the first time in a long time, I feel that the we in We the People could truly be represented. So I'm so proud of Mr. Biden's pick, and I'm so proud that Kamala Harris is on the ticket and that she's got this wide brushstroke that's going to represent, I think, more of America. So I know it's a basic thing, David. Each and every one of us want to be heard and seen. We want to know that we matter, and we might just get this with this kind of new thing on the ticket, this new woman on the ticket, an American where all people matter.
Oh, that's so true. What was astounding, I don't know if you felt this, but many of my close friends who I've been in contact with over Zoom or over the antiquated telephone speaking, we had a moment. There was a moment where all the other, pardon the expression, crap from that administration has been pushed aside. We had just one moment where you sat and you looked and you listened to her speech, and you go, oh my God, maybe there is hope. I shouldn't write this country off yet. And and actually it lasted about 24, 48 hours now. So it was an incredible experience. The second thing I wanted to talk about that meant something, Shirley Chisholm was my congresswoman.
Oh my gosh.
In Brooklyn. So first of all, as a congresswoman, it was still, I mean, as you said earlier, it was astounding that a black woman was voted in.
She was the first.
And it took Brooklyn by storm. It was something we had never seen. It was just at the point, I mean, there was still, people don't know, Brooklyn was segregated. And there's an interesting story about how segregated it was. And there were two major developers who built a lot of the apartment buildings that the emerging middle class moved into. One was Lefrak, or Lefrak, as we used to say. Now they say Lefrak. And the other one was Trump. Everybody, it wasn't racism, or maybe there was an underlying racism to everybody because we came out of our own ethnic groups. You know, the Jews lived in this neighborhood, the Irish lived in this neighborhood, the Italians lived in that neighborhood, and they always wanted to stay in their own ghettos. And these groups went to the Trump and the Lefraks, and here it is, because they promised that their buildings would be only white, right? So that was the initial racism of the Lefraks and the Trumps. And that's where it all started. So the Shirley Chisholm thing was amazing because she got a lot of the white vote that put her in Congress. And of course, it was astounding when she decided to run for president. Your jaws dropped.
I mean, she was such a trailblazer. Mm-hmm. She was so courageous. And without her, there would not be a Kamala Harris here today.
No.
I mean, she set a tone that even though it was a long time before there was someone else, you know, that high up on the ticket, she set a tone that was undeniable, and it wasn't going to go away. And so, you know, I just had to honor her as part of the current event, even though I think she died in 2005. But I've been proud and excited the last couple of days. And like you, I watched Biden and Kamala Harris talking, you know, for the first time together. And there was such a sense of civility and dignity. And I thought, wow, I've really missed that kind of dignified, polite way of wanting to represent all people. There was no name calling.
That's right.
And it was refreshing.
There's one, I'll just do this in 2 sentences. There's something I've become aware of over the last couple of weeks, even in the Democratic Party. You notice that the name that's absent is Hillary Clinton. And I think because there is this idea that she wasn't liked. And I know I personally loved her. And I understand over 25 years, she got battered, you know, by one side of the aisle. But I know they can't, but I wish they would constantly thank her also.
Yes. She was also a trailblazer. And, you know, when change is happening in society, it doesn't happen smoothly. We lumber, we're awkward. We never do it right the first time. And that's just the nature of change. And so she was a trailblazer in that she went out and did everything wrong that could be done, or the campaign did everything wrong that could be done, and lumbered toward, you know, a woman at the top of the ticket. And I think that she got a lot of undeserved grief from people. She was not my favorite choice or my first choice, but man, I do have a lot of respect for her. And I think she really more than took one for the team, so to speak.
Absolutely. Well, that was a great opening. Certainly relevant. We'll take that break now so we can say hello to our sponsor and our advertisers. I'm David Yakir. I'm here with Stephanie Raffelock. You're listening to Yak About Today. And we are back. I'm David. That's Stephanie. Oh, you can't see Stephanie, can you? I can see her. Anyway, we picked a year. We did.
We did pick a year.
Okay. I'll say what the year is. You start. All right. 1984.
1984. Well, I have to return. Geraldine Ferraro, the first woman to be a vice presidential pick. She was on Walter Mondale's ticket. And Reagan won the election. So that was it for Geraldine Ferraro. But once again, another trailblazer. And there was some excitement about seeing a woman rise to the top. And I was a really young woman in 1984. I was like 32 years old. 84, Indira Gandhi was assassinated.
Right.
And Indira Gandhi was the first woman to be prime minister of India. So another first. And then, of course, Margaret Thatcher won victory in a landslide in the UK. And, we still haven't caught up with the rest of the world as far as having a woman leader, but I think that we will. Do you remember Argyle? I got totally into Argyle in 1984. I had like all these little Argyle vests, and I wore them with corduroy pants. And, I couldn't wear them often because I lived in Los Angeles at the time. And it was too hot for Argyle vests, but I found a way. I had matching Argyle socks, really nice loafers, and, of course, corduroy pants. I was very, very Brooks Brothers. My favorite movie of 1984 was Ghostbusters, and my favorite song was Tina Turner's What's Love
Oh,
Got
yes.
to Do?
Yes, mine too. Mine too.
The all-time great songs. Yeah.
So
there you have it.
Okay. I'll add a few things that I guess mean something to me from a historical point of view. The Apple Macintosh commercial, 1984, aired. And I'm a techie, so it's one of the things that stayed with me. And interesting enough, talk about 1984 from the book, and today, where people are trying to ban books, school districts are not allowing some of the great classics in the classrooms. So that whole 1984 thing, stayed with me. This is a big one for me, having lost so many people, that the AIDS virus was actually identified that year by the French. And that was the start of a very slow process to build out the drugs that would eventually allow people to live. That was big. As far as the two things I remember is I was an adjunct professor at City University, and I really loved teaching. I had to move my classes all to the evening because teaching doesn't support you financially. And during the day, I was a word processor at a temp agency because I knew technology and I knew how to work word processors back then.
Oh my gosh.
And it taught me humility because doing that, I was always the secretary, as it was called back then.
That's what it was called.
Right? I was the secretary. And while I was typing, young people who were in the workforce, in the bank or whatever, would tell me to get them coffee, to run errands for them, and to do my word processing. And I remember the first time that I actually experienced that, my ego got out of control. How dare you? I am far superior to anything you will ever achieve in your life. Until I realized I needed the money. And I have to tell you, I was the best word processor, and I don't know how obnoxious I was. Here, sir, Here, madam, here's your coffee. Can I get anything else for you? With a smile on my face, and I turn around and I go, I can't say the word. I'd have to bleep it out.
Yeah, I know what you said. I know you well enough, David.
So
let's say that you muttered it under your breath.
That's right. That's right. Now, of course, given the whole life, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. It taught me a lot. It taught me humility. It taught me all those things. And it's a good story when people tell me their history and that I don't understand what it is to be this, you know. And I was treated like you. And by the way, I treated everybody that I had the fortune to work with the equal amount of respect. So I think it taught me that back then. All right, we'll take a break, and then I'm going to go for it and tell you what I've been thinking. All right, we are back. So, Steph.
Yeah, David, what you been thinking?
Well, it's not often that I've been thinking, right? So, here it is. So I've been thinking. But basically, I think more or less observing. So I was thinking about some of the discussions I've had with my neighbors. And of course, over the last 6 months, I've had lots of discussions. And being that we are mostly trapped in our communities, right? To keep our sanity, we'll go walking, we jog. In my case, I wog. We ride our bicycles. And sometimes we sort of sit at the opposite ends of the pool, you know, chatting away. So as a result, more or less, I've gotten to know my neighbors better than I would have if the COVID-19 virus hadn't existed. But sort of here comes the observation. So in our discussions, I've learned where people are from, what the towns and cities were like when they were young. The talk almost resembles the chat we would have in our year in review that we just did. For example, we'd reminisce about the style of clothing we wore, the news and events of the time. We'd learn the differences about our upbringing, depending on where we were from, and our religions, our different religions. We also shared a lot of common experiences, like how we all hid under our desks in case of a nuclear war.
Oh, gosh.
Go figure. You know, what genius came up with that? And I know well enough about their lives today because, honestly, I'm living with them. In fact, I think my neighbors would be the first people I'd call in case of an emergency, because we're sort of, you know, in this, we don't say it, but we've created this family. And, you know, our talks today are about today. You know, we'll talk about our doctors we visit for various illnesses. Sometimes we have an argument about who has the best gastroenterologist. Anyway, I was thinking about my piece a few weeks ago that I did, the one where I was staring into the ocean, and it took me back to my college days in Santa Barbara. And I realized then that it didn't even faze me that I skipped over the entire mid part of my life. And in fact, I knew nothing about my neighbor's life in between their youth and today. Don't know what they did, right? What were some of the major events in their lives? All I knew is they were talking about their childhood or growing up, and as I was, and then we'd have our current conversations mostly about doctors. So I asked myself, why is that? So the other night, I was reflecting on that, and I realized that I had gaping holes in my memory. And I'm not exactly sure what I did or when I did it. And I never had really thought about that before. I remembered one thing, though. I was always pretty organized and very methodical on how I did my business. And every time there was a newspaper or magazine article about my business ventures or awards or reviews of my theater and television ventures, I always threw them into a box. And I never really looked at them after they went into the box. So yesterday, I decided I was going to do this great discovery. So I searched my house for that box. We moved so many times before we settled in Florida. You know, we moved from country house to country house, and then that a lot of the boxes were really unpacked, and I really became obsessed. I tore apart every closet. I pulled out all the boxes from the garage. Lo and behold, I found it. And there were dozens of articles. And I spent nearly 3 hours looking through them. And so many of them, when I saw them, I went, oh, I had forgotten. And there was one thing that really took me by surprise I hadn't thought about in 35 years. I was reading a New York Times article about how I tried to buy a Broadway theater.
Oh, my gosh.
And I had totally forgotten about that. In fact, I hadn't spoken to the partner that I was trying to buy the theater with for 30-something years. Not that we had a falling out or anything. Our lives just went in separate directions. Then I thought back to my neighbors. Maybe they had a box in the house that they needed to look through so we could all talk about that mid part of our lives. So that's what I've been thinking.
That's great. And I'll bet that you want me to tell you something good. Yeah.
Really, tell me something good.
Here's what's good. We updated our Facebook page, Yak About Today, and our website, Yak About Today. And it's got such a fresh, great style. And it was so much fun. It was like decorating a room with you. Like, here's our new banner on the Facebook page and our new logo for the radio show and the podcast. And it's tons of fun. And I just want to invite everyone to come visit at the Facebook page, leave us a comment, let us know you were there, and check out our new digs.
Go to our Facebook page, will you? Anyway.
Yeah, because it's something good.
That's right. Something good. Anyway, we've got to go. And we say it every week.
Ew.
Goodbye, Steph.
Goodbye.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.